Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to be checking out a video titled, Is it time for Europe to ditch America? I don't see why not. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't see why not. Europe is literally a continent. I don't think Europe needs the United States. It helps, but I don't think it's needed. If Europe actually pulls together, Europe is quite strong if they pull together, right? But if they're separated, then now we have a problem. But the EU is a perfect example, in my humble opinion. Like the UK, yeah, they left the EU, and based on what I've heard and seen from a lot of people, the UK has not been as strong as it was when it was in the EU. So that's a perfect example of why I think Europe and European countries in general could survive easily without the United States. Because actually, Europe did it without the United States either ways. You know what I mean? Because European countries been here for so long, blah, 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 all these empires, blah, 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 blah. You get the whole 9 yards. So we're going to be checking out this video right now. So thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe. And yeah, without further ado, let's check out this video.
For most of modern history, Europe, or at least Western Europe, and the United States have been best mates. The two are connected by cultural, economic, and military ties, most obviously manifest in NATO, and despite the occasional hiccup, have moved in ideological lockstep for much of the past few decades. However, in the past few years or so, the transatlantic relationship has come under unprecedented strain, and things only look likely to get more difficult as Trump sets up what looks sure to be an antagonistic second term. So in this video, we're going to look at some of the various points of tension straining this relationship, and whether Europe and America could really fall out for good.
Fallout is just not a good term. I hate that term because that is the last thing I want to see. But the ditching the United States is not that bad. But Fallout sounds like war, dude. I don't want that. I don't need that.
Who's the best politician right now? Hear our thoughts and argue with us on our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard. Find it on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favorite podcast app. So as we see it, there are both short-term, Trump-related pressures on the transatlantic relationship and long-term, more structural pressures that won't go away even if Trump is succeeded by a more traditional Democrat in 2028. Let's start with those short-term Trump-related pressures though. The first one, and the one that's most in the news at the moment, is Trump's interest in Greenland and his apparent disdain for internationally recognized borders more generally. For anyone who somehow missed this, earlier in the week, Trump reiterated his intention to buy Greenland from Denmark, and then on Tuesday he gave a press conference where he refused to rule out using military force to take the territory, arguing that the United States needed Greenland for, quote, economic security and national security reasons. Unsurprisingly, this ruffled some diplomatic feathers in Europe. And on Wednesday morning, France's foreign minister basically said that the EU would defend Greenland if the United States tried to invade. But even if Trump doesn't invade Greenland, his apparent disdain for internationally recognized borders, as evidenced by his other comments on Canada and Panama, as well as reoccurring reports that he's planning to invade northern Mexico without the Mexican government's approval, will strain the transatlantic relationship. European politicians and governments are generally a bit more concerned about international law than their American counterparts, and especially their Republican counterparts. This isn't us Brits taking a jab at the US, by the way. It's just true that the US is more in the habit of breaking international law or going against the international consensus than Europe, as evidenced by the plethora of UN treaties that the US has refused to sign or ratify. As such, Europe will be especially keen to protect international norms, particularly when it comes to states' territorial integrity, because they've spent the past few years accusing Russia of breaking international law by violating Ukraine's internationally recognized borders. If they stand by while Trump either threatens to or actually does violate territorial integrity of smaller states like Canada, Panama, and Mexico, it will undermine their argument against Russia, and they'll be seen as hypocrites by the international community. The second Trump-related pressure on the transatlantic relationship is Elon Musk. Musk is a close ally of Trump's and has emerged as a vocal supporter of right-wing, anti-establishment politicians across Europe, including Tommy Robinson in the UK, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, and the AfD in Germany. Unsurprisingly, this hasn't endeared him to the more established figures in Europe, who are also worried about Musk's influence on European political discourse via X, which Musk has started using to amplify certain issues, sometimes via disinformation. If European politicians do decide to take action against Musk, which seems increasingly likely at this point, it will doubtless cause some friction with the Trump administration, given that Trump has basically endorsed Musk's meddling. The third and final Trump-related pressure is
It's kind of crazy that this video was 2 months ago, and the majority of the things that he's speaking about has already happened and is already in a very bad light. It's kind of crazy. And what's funny is Elon. I saw a video that he posted, like a lot of misinformation when it came to the election, and I mean, like, I didn't really think Kamala was going to be a strong force against Donald Trump. Simply fact, because I'm just going to be real with you. This may come off very harsh, but I think the world has minimal respect for women when it comes to leadership roles. I think Europe is in a much better place. When I moved to Finland, the prime minister in Finland was a woman. In Sweden, they had women in leadership roles. But I think a lot of people, for some reason, even women, just don't think women are capable of leading, and women are moody tooty and they'll start wars, which is wild because I don't have to explain that part, right? Because the baby knows what I'm talking about, because all the wars that humanity has been through has been the cause of men and the greed and so on and so forth, right? So I already didn't think Kamala was going to successfully win this election that happened. I didn't think so because of the fact that she was a woman, right? I remember what happened with Hillary Clinton. It was the same results, right? It's unique, right? A lot of people won't admit to it, but a lot of people have admitted to it regarding gender bias. Women and men. It's shameful, but it's sad that Elon would do misinformation with the type of power that he has and the type of following that he has. It just doesn't make any sense, because you'd think you just speak the truth and just get the truth out there, and that would be it. Your argument would be truth and not lies. Like how I'm telling you that I've seen videos of men and women telling you that Kamala is not supposed to be a leader because she's a woman, right? So it's wild, I guess.
Ukraine. Now, we've done a whole video on Trump's plan for Ukraine before, but the TLDR is that while there is some ambiguity here, Trump has signaled his intention to wind down American support for Ukraine, which has provoked some anxiety in Europe, where there's a pretty broad pro-Ukraine consensus at the moment. Anyway, those are the three big Trump-related pressures on the transatlantic relationship. But a myopic focus on Trump obscures the fact that US-EU relations have been under strain for a while now, thanks to some deeper structural fact that pressures.
I don't want to be mean.
US-EU
I don't want to be mean because
transatlantic relationship. But
I often criticize people that talk about people's appearance because I don't think it is something that people can change. But what I've noticed is that, okay, look at both of the women, beside Donald Trump. They are clearly, their skin tones are uneven. My skin tone is uneven because, I play sports. I'm outside quite often, but the way how their skin tone is uneven, you can tell it's like fake. It's something was done. Donald Trump's skin tone uneven. You can tell it's fake. There's something going on. My question is why I look at is it President Marat? The French president. I'm just going to say the French president. Look at him and how he looks right here.
Myopic focus on Trump obscures the fact that US-EU relations.
He just looks natural. It just looks like a normal human being. And I think that's one thing I respect about Europe. Like, look at the security right there. Imagine she just looked like she was out there trying to model or something. You know what I mean? I think a lot of Europeans, they just do things a little bit different, and I actually respect that a lot. And excuse me for actually critiquing appearance because it's not something that I like to do, but it's something that I observed watching this video. I've never really took notice of it, but it's something that I observe.
have been under strain for a while now, thanks to some deeper structural factors. The first of these is China. China is actually a rare point of bipartisan agreement within the United States. Biden broadly continued with Trump's hawkish China policy and actually sounded more bellicose on the question of Taiwan, saying explicitly on multiple occasions that the US would indeed protect Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion, implying a departure from America's long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity. But while Europe shares some of America's concerns about Chinese trade practices and the CCP's authoritarian tendencies, European countries are generally far less hawkish on Taiwan, and nowhere near as worried about the supposed Chinese threat to American hegemony. This was made glaringly apparent when, on his way back from a trip to Beijing, Macron warned that the great risk for Europe is that it gets caught up in crises that are not ours, i.e. Taiwan. This caused quite a kerfuffle in Washington when it happened. But what was actually most notable about this episode was that basically zero European politicians came out against Macron. The second related tension is around America's newfound penchant for protectionism. Again, this is a bipartisan issue, and it's been motivated by America's anxieties about Chinese dominance in certain supply chains. This is why Biden kept almost all of Trump's tariffs, and actually increased tariffs on certain items that he deemed to be strategically significant, as well as introducing massive subsidies for American manufacturers via the Inflation Reduction Act. This hasn't gone down well with Europe, not just because Trump's tariffs and the Inflation Reduction Act directly affect European companies, but also because, more generally, Europe is more anxious about the global turn to protectionism than the US is. Unlike the US, Europe lacks a domestic energy supply, a wealthy consumer base to buy its products, or the fiscal space to afford expensive protectionist measures like the Inflation Reduction Act, which is why they're generally keener on a more open global trade environment. The third point of tension is the Middle East. Now, there's always been an uncomfortable transatlantic asymmetry over the Middle East, because America just has more influence in the region. But Europe is also more affected by its negative externalities, i.e., when the region is destabilized, it's Europe that's affected by the subsequent uptick in migration and often terrorism. The tension has become all the more apparent with Israel, with Europe generally pushing harder for de-escalation than the US has, and being more critical of Israel's violations of international law. And transatlantic tensions over the Middle East look likely to increase in Trump's second term, given that Trump will probably pursue a relatively hardline Iran policy. And last month, the Wall Street Journal even reported that Trump is considering a direct, preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear facilities once he takes office. This is unlikely to go down well in Europe, which has always wanted the US to take a more conciliatory approach to Iran, both because it worries about the geopolitical fallout and because if sanctions were lifted, Iran could be an alternative oil and gas supplier for Europe. All in all, while no one can predict the future, it's at least true that there are both short and long-term points of tension for the transatlantic relationship, which will probably only get worse over the next 4 years, potentially presaging a more permanent split, something that could lead to some interesting power struggles. The question, though, is who'd come out on top? Who would be left as the most influential person? That's what we're trying to find out with our official most influential person list, which we need your help with. So if you want to help us decide on who the most influential person in the entire world is, then you can click the link in the description to...
Most influential person? I hate to say it, but it is Donald Trump. There's not even a question mark to it, dude. Dude, there's not even, it's quite obvious, man. A lot of people may not be for the dude, but he's very much influential, dude. He literally won an election telling some crazy things, right? Saying what he's gonna do and what he is very influential. I give it to him. He's even they were asking about great politicians. When it comes to tricking, so you're doing politics and you're tricking and you're just getting your way with politics, he has it. I'm not gonna say he's the greatest politician right now in terms of how he does things and laws and so on and so forth. No, I'm talking about simply how he has a fan base that just does whatever and doesn't give a rat's ass what he does bad. That's what I'm talking about, right? He's very influential. I don't know how, but it's there. I think a lot of Europeans are confused as to why so many Americans root for Donald Trump. I don't have the answer. But I think one of the main answers is because he preaches America first. And the idea of America first, gets to a lot of Americans' heart. So I think that's the case. So don't for 1 second think I'm exalting Donald Trump. I'm just saying his methods of execution and how he handles things in his politics to get results in terms of votes, he's very influential. It's as simple as that. Positivity? No. That's not where, no. But thank you guys for watching this video. Let me know what y'all think about, this video and my final statement regarding Donald Trump and, how influential he is. And, yeah, this doesn't look good. That's all I'm gonna say. It doesn't look good because 90% of the things that he spoke about has already happened and is already going south. So, yeah, this doesn't look like a great year. Anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. I'm out of here. Peace.